Welcome back. One final point before we go tonight. What the mainstream media was afraid to tell you about the news this week. This week, while the mainstream media obsessed with disrespecting President George H.W. Bush's service dog, here are the things that happened that really matter. In Florida, an unexpected demographic of voters turned out to be the deciding factor in Governor-elect Ron DeSantis' victory over progressive Andrew Gillum. African-American school choice moms whose kids go to charter schools in Florida voted for DeSantis over Gillum because DeSantis promised to champion school choice and Gillum demonized it. These black women are mostly registered Democrats who voted for Democrat Bill Nelson for Senate, but 100,000 of them voted for DeSantis for governor. DeSantis defeated Gillum by just 33,000 votes. These African-American school choice moms were the deciding factor in that victory. But did the mainstream media tell you about this? Oh no, they didn't. The mainstream media did not tell you this because they're afraid more black Americans will walk away from the Democratic Party. After the 2016 election, Google employees debated burying conservative websites in their search engine. They said, we can't let the election of Donald Trump happen again. They claimed conservative online news outlets were not legitimate and therefore deserved to be buried. Did the mainstream media report on this? Well, of course they didn't. Instead, the mainstream media parrots the talking points from the left that social media bias against conservatives doesn't exist. Drag queen reading hours are popping up at public libraries all over the country. As the name suggests, grown men dressed in highly sexualized drag costume read stories on gender identity to preschoolers. These groups claim they're not indoctrinating children, but then one drag queen who proudly participates in these story hours admits that these events are grooming the next generation. That's a pretty significant admission. Some people might even call that indoctrination. And indoctrinating kids in an ideology that significantly raises their chance of committing suicide is a very dangerous thing to do. But did the mainstream media tell you this story? No, they didn't. So the left can continue peddling the transgender ideology for political purposes. Parkland student Peter Wang died on February 14th of this year during the massacre at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. Peter died while holding open the door for his fellow students so they could escape before him. Peter did not get a chance to escape. Peter's classmate, Kyle Kashuv, started a petition to ask President Trump to award Peter the Presidential Medal of Freedom for his heroism and bravery. But did the mainstream media report this story to you? No, they didn't. The mainstream media praised the gun control kids from Parkland and ignored the student who gave his life to save his friends. The mainstream media doesn't care to report any of that to you, so we will. And that is my final points. You can reach me on Twitter at Liz_Wheeler. If you like the show, please send me an email at oann.com/contact. In the meantime, catch us here tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. And until then, have a good night.
What's the best way to stop a bad man with a gun or knife? A good woman with a gun. But is that God-given right of self-preservation worth the risk and the possibility of bad people doing bad things? Well, if lettuce is worth the risk, then so are firearms. Where am I going with this? I'm Ben Davies. This is Pure Hollywood. Well, recently, Bruce McLaughlin, a prison escapee on 2 counts of kidnapping, first-degree assault, and battery, broke into the home of a woman alone with a knife at 3 a.m. However, this woman was fortunately trained with a firearm and killed the man as he broke into her room. My goodness, that would be terrifying. Now, the Pickens County Sheriff Rick Clark said, quote, "This was a big guy. If she hadn't had a weapon in there, no telling what would have happened." Clark said that he gave her a big hug and said he was proud of her. Talk about a great hashtag time's up moment, right? A strong woman we can rally behind, right? No, of course not. But I do ask you, what do you think would have happened? Would she have been yet another victim of kidnapping, assault, or battery if the Democrats, hashtag ban all guns enthusiasts, had their way? Particularly after it was released by the CDC that there's way more people saved through firearm use than are killed by them. Which is why my daughter will be trained with firearms as soon as she's old enough. But hey, if even one person is killed through firearms, we should remove them all. It's tragic, I get it. Bad people will always do bad things. It's also tragic when someone dies from something that is produced improperly. And this comes on the heels of a massive lettuce E. coli outbreak in LA County. The previous outbreak killed 5 people. But we won't talk about those risks much, will we? Because lettuce saves so many lives, right? And after all, it's just one crazed batch of produce. The vast majority of produce is healthy and awesome. And also, it doesn't stir any voters. Oh, if only guns worked on lettuce, the world would be a safer place. I'm Ben Davies. This is Pure Hollywood. Did you enjoy that video? Of course you enjoyed that video. So now you need to become a premium member to the Rebel. That way you have first access to Pure Hollywood and the entire Rebel lineup. Well, my goodness, this is some low-hanging fruit. But when life gives you Chelsea Clinton, you make sure to let people know what these political elites think of you and your beliefs. During an interview with intersectional feminist Jess McIntosh, Chelsea Clinton was asked about the abortion debate. Of course, Chelsea Clinton disagrees with the pro-life side, but she also said, quote, "It was unchristian," unquote. Oh boy, I'm Ben Davies. This is Pure Hollywood. What have our politics come to? Chelsea Clinton has already hinted that she may run for office. You know, someone who holds the practice of dismembering children at whim and having your tax dollars pay for it in such high and sacred regards that it's no longer a difference of opinion in the sanctity of life, but rather you are also unchristian if you disagree with her. In the interview, Chelsea Clinton was asked how she possibly stays positive with the debate over Roe v. Wade. She said, quote, "Every day I make a moral choice to be optimistic." She goes on to say, "And when I think about all those statistics that are painful of what women are confronting today in our country and what even more women confronted pre-Roe v. Wade and how many women died and how many more women were maimed because of unsafe abortion practices, we just can't go back to that." First off, when else in history in the United States or any Western country has it ever been better time to be alive? And I mean for anyone, not just women, anyone. What was that? None? Never? Not even close? But particularly more when it comes to women. Women right now live longer than men, are graduating college at a much higher rate, and are making more money on average than men under the age of 30, which magically does flip after 30, not because women decide to leave the workforce, take less hours so they can raise a family and bring up the next generation. No, of course it can't be because of that. It has to be somehow because of sexism, right? But to her other statement, how many of these women did die from getting these backdoor alley abortions that the left always talks about? You know, you just never hear about that, right? Even the states that do have stricter abortion laws. But Chelsea doesn't stop there. No. She says, quote, "That's just unconscionable to me. And also, I'm sure that this will unleash another wave of hate in my direction, but as a deeply religious person, it's also unchristian to me." Now, I'm not going to say anything about Chelsea Clinton's religious beliefs per se, and I do not want a slew of people to just go out and berate Chelsea Clinton. However, her interpretation of the Bible, I would question. Yeah, I guess you get a hall pass for some of those pesky 10 commandments when the other person's life is inconvenient for you. Or when that person came along, you know, when it was unplanned. Because of course, according to Chelsea, being pro-life is unchristian. You know, there are so many verses in the Bible talking about you doing what makes life easier for you. There are scriptures that say that, right? Is there even a single verse that implies you should do what makes your life easier? And that is what Jesus said, right? You know, seek first your own self-interest, and all the good feelings of life will be added upon you, and it'll be super awesome and easy with no consequences whatsoever. Yeah, you know, I just can't seem to remember any Bible verses remotely similar to that. But what do you guys think? Do you think the pro-life side is unchristian? Let me know in the comment section. I'm Ben Davies. This is Pure Hollywood. The way the media covers a story tells you so much about them. Now, I'm a conservative Christian, so my take is very different from Vice and BuzzFeed. And though we may try, our biases will sometimes slip through. But let me ask you something that should be pretty objective. Is there a difference in someone perishing attempting to climb Mount Everest and someone perishing running into a burning building to save those within? Well, not to many in the mainstream media who believe a 27-year-old American missionary who was murdered attempting to help people was, quote, an adventure seeker. Wow, that's illuminating. I'm Ben Davies. This is Pure Hollywood. We've all seen these media slants, right? Like if free speech rally is attacked by Antifa, and many in the mainstream media will say free speech rally people incite violence. And you're like, wait, what? Who came there to attack? Wait, do Antifa rallies get attacked? Do pride marches get attacked? Do pro-abortion marches get shut down? No, the right almost never, if ever, attacks other events, but somehow, some way, it's the right's fault. The right just brings it on itself. And in this tragic story, John Cho, the American missionary, was killed after he reached North Sentinel Island, which is banned from outside contact and is illegal to travel to, which is probably why you haven't heard of it. And John was killed when he reached the island by the native people, the Sentinelese, who have been isolated and cut off from the world for thousands of years. So, how would the mainstream media paint this story? Well, USA Today was pretty clear, leading with a headline saying, quote, American on misplaced adventure killed by hostile tribes on remote island. Very subtle. NBC said, quote, American killed by isolated tribe on India's North Sentinel Island, police say. And then they lead it with, quote, an American adventurer who kayaked to a remote Indian island populated by a tribe known for shooting outsiders with bows and arrows has been killed, police say Wednesday. Yeah, this adventurer got what was coming to him. And LA Times leads with its first quote, calling John an American tourist. The mainstream media is quick to lump John's actions into an adventure seeker, a tourist, or a risk taker, painting the story for the readers that John's acts were all self-seeking, self-serving, risking his life solely for the thrill. And I guess he just got what was coming to him. Well, let me give you some more details from his actual journals and the last entries of it. John said, quote, I'm scared, watching the sunset and it's beautiful, crying a bit, wondering if it'll be the last sunset I see, unquote. Quote, you guys may think I'm crazy in all this, but I think it's worthwhile to declare Jesus to these people. God, I don't want to die, unquote. And despite knowing the danger, John had been planning this trip for 3 years, as mentioned by a friend to the Daily Mail, to quote, preach Christianity to the tribesmen. Yeah, it really sounds like he was trying to get an adrenaline rush, right? And on his final day, the fisherman who dropped him off said, quote, John found himself facing a flurry of arrows, but he kept walking. The tribe then tied a rope around his neck and dragged his body away. Does that sound like a tourist or adventure seeker to you? Now, whether if you believe like John believed that God called him to help these people and help give them hope in a future, you must at least acknowledge this was not for some selfish thrill, but rather attempt to give hope to a people who have been cut off and forgotten by the world. Which brings us back to the main point. Why this slant? And what do you think the headlines would read if a Muslim man attempted to reach this island to spread Allah? Or even a feminist who traveled to the island to empower the local women with education and even opportunities off the island? What do you think would happen? What do you think the slant would be in the media? Would they be called adventure seeker or tourist? Or would we have to declare a national holiday in a moment of silence? I can only imagine. But I think at the very least, John Cho should be remembered with admiration. If only we all had the same conviction to lay our lives down for those in need. I'm Ben Davies. This is Pure Hollywood. Hateful, discriminator, bigoted, small-minded, cowardly, greedy, feckless, C-word. These are a few words used to describe people who the elite left disagree with. An interesting tactic for a collection of people who espouse ad nauseum, we said or did this awful thing to start a dialogue. I find it difficult to start a dialogue with someone who opens up with F you. I'm Ben Davies, this is Pure Hollywood. Now, I'm sure many of you have seen the speech by Robert De Niro at the Tony Awards where he walked out boldly and proclaimed, F Trump. Besides the fact that it looks like many of the celebrities cannot devoid themselves from Twitter dialogue and the real world with actual people who they may affect, I feel like this is a very small, insignificant symptom of a much larger and more dangerous problem. Here's my problem. The left's narrative of speaking your truth to power. We're good, they're bad. We're oppressed, they're oppressors. We're courageous, they're cowards. And this narrative enables this kind of disdain and rhetoric. First, there is no your truth. There is truth and your opinion. But also, this comes on the heels of many other self-grandizing and bombastic statements from other elites. Again, not by Twitter trolls, but of people of the highest echelon put there by our support and admiration. Like Eminem drawing his line in the sand and saying to the people on the other side, F you. Or Ellen Pompeo, the highest paid actress on TV, telling all of her fans that supported Trump, go F yourselves. First, I would say if you need to invoke slander or shut down someone else's point of view, it's pretty clear evidence that you had no way of being intellectually honest to win on merit, debate, or discussion. Clearly seen by either political side's greatest hit compilations on YouTube. On one side, you may see Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, and others using different facts and reason to argue the different points against the other person. And on the political left, you may see highlight videos from the Young Turks and Anna Kasprin yelling, I'm better than you, F you, or Michael Eric Dyson condemning a man, calling him a mean, mad white man. And if you are truly good and those people are truly bad, why would you have to keep saying it in a discussion? Why in responding to an argument or issue would you have to say this person is bad, is a racist, is a misogynist, before actually disproving their point? If you're good and that person is bad, it should be pretty objectively obvious to the audience, right? Next, what does it mean to be oppressed to these people? To be literally the most privileged group of people in the United States? Not only to be wealthy beyond measure, but to be icons in the social sphere as well. To be at award shows put on by yourselves for yourselves, and signal to the world how unbelievably virtuous and awesome you are. And every ridiculous, condescending statement being rewarded with thunderous applause. Or maybe being oppressed means to not be able to say what you think, or being forced into a prison of opinion for fear of losing favor in your career. Finally, the notion of we are courageous and they are cowards. Tell me, what did happen to De Niro, Eminem, and Pompeo? De Niro was received with thunderous applause. And other than the fans that Eminem specifically crossed out in the line in front of him, he was received with praise by the media and award shows alike. Ellen Pompeo, the highest paid person on TV, patriarchy much, was rewarded with another contract. Tell me, is that courage? Saying what everyone in your sphere of influence wants to hear? Or is it more dangerous to not beat down people in a profanity-ridden tirade, but simply say, I'm gonna give Trump a chance? Like Dave Chappelle, who was berated and forced to apologize after he gave his monologue that was prepared and written out on SNL. And this is just wanting your country to do well. Let's put aside if you openly say you're pro-life or want more religious freedoms for people. Our discourse is degenerating. Those who are held on a pedestal, not random ghost Twitter trolls. I'm talking about people of prominence in our society who are spokespeople for these issues or examples of how we should think and behave. When their dialogue devolve into tirades and scorn-laced profanity, it projects a caricature to cover these common people who these elites have now described in this horrible way, who their fans may actually be friends with or they may bump into on a daily basis. And tell me this, when this is perpetuated constantly in the way people talk and treat one another, how does this start a dialogue? Solution? Just keep speaking truth to power in a civil manner and let the chips fall where they may. I think those arguments will win. I'm Ben Davies. This is Pure Hollywood.
This is what really scares me about the 2 Muslim women elected to Congress, is because, you know, once you link votes to a community that you then need to appease, you'll find that community are given a disproportionate amount of funding because effectively you're buying votes. Just as in the centre of London, in Trafalgar Square, we had an Eid Day celebration, you know, laid on by the Muslim mayor, paid for by British taxpayers. And it's great if you want to celebrate Eid, but we don't need the centre of London earmarked off for an Eid celebration, in my view. And we even have the Muslim Police Association, you know, a police association that are a Muslim police association. We're very far down the fall.
What is Eid?
Eid is the end of Ramadan. So it's like a big party for the Muslim community. So well, I mean, for you to say what is Eid is interesting, isn't it? Because where I live, Eid is much bigger than Christmas.
Really?
So our Prime Minister doesn't tend to give an Easter message. She didn't give an Easter message. She didn't give, I believe, a Christmas message, but the Eid message she gave, she looked like, it was like a hostage video. She was so just, thank you to our Muslim communities and our friends. She looked, I just wanted to go, Theresa May, blink twice if you're being held. Blink twice if you need help. It was like she had a gun to her head to do this Eid message. It was painful. But that's the feeling. And that's the feeling for, you know, the really sad thing, away from all the kind of, you know, political point scoring and all the kind of I'll fight back stuff, is I get emails from, you know, 75, 80-year-olds, and sometimes it's the first email they've ever sent because, of course, the internet's nonsense to them.
Right.
And they say, you know, that they maybe even fought in the war or whatever, or they've lived here for all their lives, and that they no longer want to be alive. They're glad their time is nearly up because they don't want to be here when their country falls.
That's amazing.
And those are the emails, you know, that could get me any time. I get those emails and it just gives me the shivers now. Because what a terrible thing.
Sure is.
Yeah, that we have created that someone's even also emailing me to say, there's no hope and I'm glad I'll be gone.
Someone comes in and take over your home, and now you're helpless to it, defenseless to it, and you would rather just die.
You'd rather die. And, you know, they used to, like, you know, leave their doors open.
Yeah.
They knew their neighbours. They would help each other out. They knew the man in the shop. They knew the guy in the, you know, the grocery store. Now they know no one, and they're isolated, and they're surrounded by communities they don't even recognise, because of course we have the full burqa, headscarf, just eyeballs. And for an old, it's hard for me, but for an old person, an elderly person, It's very distressing, actually.
Do you think it will ever turn around?
No.
It's gone forever.
Yeah, we're gone. And I'm, you know, a positive person, a hopeful person.
Right.
I will bring hope wherever I can. But I truly believe the UK is gone. And having spent time in South Africa recently with the white farmers there.
Oh, that's another horrific story.
But the sort of the parallel I wanted to draw is that the white farmers in South Africa, because they're being persecuted, are now actively withdrawing to a defendable space.
Yeah.
They are looking for, and they have found territory that they believe they will now withdraw to and create a massive wall to create they talk about a last stand. They say we will shed our blood, we will die in our boots for our land. And they are making and planning and preparing and training to make a last stand. And so they're ahead of us down that awful path. But I see it in the UK now. I see my fellow Brits, fellow Conservative, those who support a Christian culture, they're moving eastwards. So for us, this last stand, this move will be eastwards now. We will push to Eastern Europe. I believe we will leave the UK. My Jewish friends have left the UK. And I think we will make a last stand in Eastern Europe where we will defend the Christian culture. It's
That's
a very
amazing.
Perverse situation.
For those who don't know, in South Africa, the government is black now, and they are taking land from the whites there without compensation. They're killing them. It's just a real mess, and so that's what we're talking about here. A lot of people are not familiar with that.
No, I agree. And actually, some people call it a neo-Nazi conspiracy theory. And that I spent 3.5 weeks in South Africa, traveling to meet the victims of the attacks on white farmers, to meet survivors, to meet farmers, white farmers in South Africa who were actively under attack. And essentially how it works, the ANC, as you say, have now got land expropriation without compensation, which basically means we're taking back the land. And how that translates on the ground with the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, is that black gangs are coming into the white farmers' homes, and it's not just that they are slaughtered, which they inevitably are. There is a long process, and I don't want to go into too much detail because I think it's upsetting for viewers, but 3, 4 hours, 5 hours of torture, of blow tortures, of hot iron being taken to women, of being strung up with the fence wiring and beaten. And I met those individuals, and I think it's just it's unbelievable to me that the world's media won't cover this because the victims are the wrong colour.
They're white.
And in a way, apartheid is still as present in South Africa as it ever was, and the only difference is it's changed from black to white. And that doesn't make it okay, and it doesn't make amends for the past, but nor does vengeance, you know, nor does revenge. So I think one day people will speak up about it, but a serving policeman who agreed to meet with me as long as he wasn't identified told me he believes the whites in South Africa have 2 years, and in 2 years there will be no more whites on the land.
Why do you think whites are hated? They're the most hated species on this side of heaven around the world. Why is that?
Well, I suppose in some ways you could argue that we've acted like arseholes in the past, and that's how, you know, you'd say in South Africa, apartheid, you know, if you bump into and talk to, and I met a lot of black farm workers, you know, and they get hurt just as much alongside the white farmer that they work for, and it's so upsetting. They're the most loyal, most devoted farm workers. But those who live in the settlements, those who are angry, young, angry men who were displaced, they want revenge for apartheid. They want revenge for the past. And I can understand that sense of wanting vengeance.
But revenge is never good.
No.
Never good. It doesn't work out for the ones who are trying to get the revenge.
No, and almost it doesn't matter what's happened.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if they've lost a job, or it doesn't matter if something didn't work out for them. It doesn't matter even if their truck just broke down. Somehow it's always, well, apartheid. It's always apartheid.
They do that here, blame everything on slavery.
Yeah, so here it's
150
slavery.
years ago. Yeah.
Slavery. And I understand that it's a dreadful thing in the past, but we have to get beyond apartheid, I think.
Yeah, that's right, 100%.
To make that cure. But, you know, I think one story that really one thing maybe that I can say to help articulate how this isn't just a conspiracy theory. You know, I went to meet Bernard. He is a white farmer, very poor. People say, why don't they leave? Why would they stay?
Couldn't.
They can't leave because they can't afford to leave. White farmers are incredibly poor.
Yeah, I've interviewed some of them on my show.
Yes.
So, yes.
And Bernard came home from church with his family. Black gangs were waiting for him in his garage when he got home. They strung him up with wire. His wife, they bound. His children, they shot at one of the children who lived, but the shot is still in the wall of their house. And then the children watched as Bernard and their mum were beaten. Bernard's father was hacked to death. And I was sitting with Bernard on the doorstep of his house overlooking his farm. And the shot is still in the wall where they tried to shoot his son, who's 11. And, you know, Bernard said he now trusts in two things. He trusts in God and the land. And there's for me, such resonance with Americans that I know who, you know, the land and your God are so fundamental to this country.
Right. Yes.
And Bernard said, apart from those two things, he doesn't trust anything. And his 11-year-old son has tried to commit suicide and wants to die because he believes that bullet was meant for him. His grandfather died, and he said, maybe if I died, my grandfather would have lived. And so that's really the truth of the genocide of the whites, is the children are the ones that also witness all of this. So
amazing.
And it's very upsetting, but it's also an important story that we talk about and tell.
Yes, absolutely. Two quick questions about that, then I want to move on to some other things here because time is going by. I noticed that white people tend to, wherever they go, they tend to create and build a free society. They're very creative. They just seem to get it all together like no other race of people I know or seen or heard about. What is it about white people that seem to be unique from all other races? And then they make this horrible mistake of inviting other people to come in who turns out to be their enemies. So number one, what is it about white people? They seem to be greater at inventing things. And, you know, I read about the Constitution, and if I'm right, this country is the only country to ever have had a constitution. And that was mind-blowing to me.
I know.
So what is it about white people that have that mentality? How did they get it above all other races?
Partly I don't know, and I definitely can't speak for white people everywhere. I know that, and I will get sorely reprimanded if I was to endeavour to. But I see the Constitution as well.
Yeah.
And can you imagine all of those hundreds of years ago, people sitting down and deciding the rules that would then exist for all of these hundreds of years. How does that even happen?
Right.
These days, we can't even have a video go up on social media and people are bored of it in 20 seconds. How have we got this amazing book that lived on through those years?
I just read that the other day, and I'm like, wow, that's
amazing.
I never knew that.
It's one of the things it's when I do talks, you know, and I'm pleading with Americans not to become like the UK.
Yes.
I would have that Constitution, and I would have it in my children's bedside tables. I would have it on the kitchen table.
Yeah.
I would have it projected in big letters on the wall of my house. I think it's the thing that might save America. The thing that built America is the thing I think that will save America, because you have your rights written down in the Constitution, and we don't have that. And you can see us fall. And secondly, your point.
One other, just to add to that, the unfortunate thing, and I know you probably already noticed, but for them, they are not teaching the Constitution to the young in the universities and high schools today.
Schools.
In the public schools.
I know. And why do we not do that? Other religious groups like Islam, who want to aggressively, in my opinion, take over a country, teach their book, and they memorize their book.
Right.
And that Quran is memorized by children from the age of 5 at the special schools they go to after school. They learn that book.
Yes.
Why? When you guys have this incredible book that is above religion and above any kind of the sense of country, it's about individual freedoms. Why do we not teach that book?
Yeah. When I was growing up, they taught that. I grew up in Alabama on a plantation under the Jim Crow laws, and they taught the Constitution, and they taught it with pride.
Yes.
You know, and I went to all-black school, and because we were segregated at the time, and they taught it with pride. We don't have that anymore.
No, and that's a tragedy. And then your second point about why do we, when we've built something great.
While white people are so smart, they build things that are great, and they. First of all, how come white people seem to be smarter in that way than the other cultures?
and then we're so
And then you bring in the
stupid.
enemies, right?
Yeah, I think
It
what
looks like you're dumb and smart.
we're super dumb. We're super dumb. White people are super dumb, and what happens is, you know, it's a word I actually hate, but it's progressives. You know, I'm so progressive. I'm so progressive. I'm going to take this, but it's like I'm going to take this mug and smash it because I'm so progressive. And that's what we've done. We take something brilliant that people created because white people like rules. That's my theory on this,
They
right?
really do.
We love a rule.
Yes.
And if you go to Germany, where I've just got back from, they love rules so much that on their subway system, they have ticket machines, but they're not even checked. So you don't, in the UK, I think here in America, when you go through to the subway, you have to put your ticket in, don't you, to get into the
yes,
subway?
you do. Yeah,
Okay.
I did them in New York. I've not done them
In New
here
York,
yet.
yeah.
But
in England, to get to the subway, you have to put your ticket in the machine to get through the barrier.
Yes.
In Germany, they don't even have a barrier because Germans are so well behaved and love rules so much, they just buy a ticket.
Really?
Because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
And when you cross a road in Germany, there's an actual rule that you must cross at 90 degrees, otherwise you get a fine. If you cross at 85 degrees, you're fined. And the Germans just love a bloody rule. And so I think that answers why white people are really good at stuff because we love a rule.
Yeah.
But then we really mess stuff up because someone decides the rules should be broken. We're so progressive, let everybody in. And I think that's where Israel's interesting, because Israel has just created new rules that say we are a Jewish state first, and they want to make it a state full of one type of person.
Yes.
And I think that's an interesting conversation. I'm a big fan of Israel.
I remember when my father asked me to stay up all night to watch fireflies. I didn't want to, but he was right. It was the most magical thing I'd seen. My mother asked me to stay patient until the chickens got here. I just wanted to pull them out of their eggs and play. I was so glad I waited. This kid I knew asked me to stay on his team. We lost the game, but he became my best friend. And when I became a teenager, everyone kept telling me to stay. Stay focused, stay out of trouble, stay faithful. And all I could think of was the stress, the pressure, the expectations. The things I used to be excited about now seem nothing like I'd imagined. Pointless, heavy. And then people asked, "How are you?" And I said, "Fine." And people said, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And I said, "No." I tried to smile and hide my darkness. I remember waking up on my 17th birthday, wanting to end my life. Because I felt so much pain. Because I felt nothing. So I decided to tell others how I feel. Bring everything hidden into the light. Because I knew one of them could help. I remember my dad holding me. My mom and my sister. Now they ask me to stay around for another moment, for another agonizing week, month, even if I couldn't see that tomorrow will get better. And I realized that somewhere in between my new, dark existence and all those beautiful moments that I've experienced in the past, I forgot something. I didn't have to stay alone. The pain doesn't fully go away. It still takes many endless conversations, therapy, prayers, medication. But as time goes on, I choose to stay hopeful. I choose to stay. To experience small, simple things I love. To see new places, meet new people. To discover who I am. To be surprised. To be loved. You can choose to stay too.